Hi, my name is Ohfor. Let's make a spell for Baldur's Gate 3. Alright, so spell you say, that's cool. Let me start by saying this is it's a pretty broad subject. Spells are central to pretty much everything in Baldur's Gate 3, and I've been sort of pondering for a few days on how best to approach it. I want to keep the format of these videos to bite-sized, so to speak. So not to introduce too much in any one episode and overwhelm. And I also want to approach it gradually so that everyone can follow along and there's not a lot of prerequisite knowledge required. So in the end, I've decided the best way to go about it is basically just approach this as we've done with weapons and armor and equipment, is to steal an existing spell, change its properties, and then comes the harder part, because if you imagine a weapon attack, that's all fine and well, and even if we imbue this axe that Karlak has here with magical properties, or we change the damage or damage type or whatever, it all stays the same and everybody's still happy. However, when it comes to spells, they have visual effects attached to them that often need to change. In some cases, if you just want to adjust the damage or the saving throws or whatever for a spell, okay, you can get away with that, and that's fine. For other spells, it won't matter. Let's say you want an action surge, but it doesn't cost a bonus action or whatever. That's also possible. But as soon as you change something fundamental about the spell, for instance, changing fire to ice, then you're going to have to do something about the visuals, because an ice spell that looks like fire, it doesn't really make sense. It will function fine, sure, but it wouldn't really be satisfactory in the long run. So we're going to be looking a little bit about how we can change the visuals of spells, and finally we'll be looking at how we can create our own visuals pretty much from ground up. Now, I am expecting this is going to take at least 3 episodes to cover, so let's just strap in and get started. With what becomes then the question, and I think the best place. Well, I don't know if it's the best place, but it's the place I've chosen. All right, so we are going to be making our own magic missile. Let's call it frozen missile, and essentially the vision is if we can create our own version of magic missile, maybe adjust the damage, definitely adjust the damage type from force to cold, change the coloring of it so it's no longer red but a bluish tint. That would be a pretty good start, I'd say. So why don't we dig into that? As with weapons and armor, etc., everything starts in here by finding magic missile, and then we'll be making our own version. So in that sense, it's really no different than if you were overriding a pair of gloves or whatever. So let's find fireball. Sorry, not fireball, magic missile, of course. And it's bound to be in here somewhere. There's likely going to be many of them. So let's see, we have magic missile 4. We have one for AI as well. 5. So what these are, whenever you see this, 4, 5, there's probably a 6 as well. That's essentially upcasts of magic missile. We won't be covering that today, but just know that that's what it is. And if you're impatient and you can't wait for me to get around to actually explaining that in detail, then go in and look. It's very simple. Essentially, you have a base version of a spell, and then you create a new version of the same spell where you use the base version as the parent, and then you change whatever parameters needs to change, maybe change the damage, and that's more or less it. So there's not a lot to it. But for purposes here, we are after, wow, there's a lot of warlock shields. Huh? We are after the very basic magic missile. It's bound to be here somewhere. There we go. Magic missile. So it is a projectile spell. That should really not surprise anyone. And shared. So magic missile has been around. I've learned that there's a sequence to this. So shared was like early access, I think. I could be getting this wrong, but just know that shared is early access, and then beta would be shared dev maybe, and release or whatever DLCs. So that's why we have Gustav dev, Gustav shared dev, shared. They're basically from different phases or evolutions of the game. Not that this really matters to us, but if you've been around long enough, I know that some of the mod authors, they know, oh, this wasn't available in early access, so therefore it would be in whatever. I always search globally anyway. I don't, as I've said many times, I don't care where it comes from, right? I just need to find it. And in this case, Magic Missile is in the shared project. So let's take a look here. The Magic Missile, it's a level 1 evocation spell. It does 1d4 plus 1 force damage magical. The range is 18 meters. You can target, so at this level you can target 3, and as we can see here, when it's upcast, you can target 4, 5, and then the rest are probably in shared dev or one of the later ones. But that's fine. What else do we have? You can't target yourself, and you can't target dead people or dead animals. So 1 projectile per target. It has some hit delay and some angle. I don't actually fully know what that is. Maybe it's something we can experiment with at some point. It has an icon. So it has a display name and a description. That's all fine. And tooltip damage. And yeah, so for all intents and purposes, we could be looking at a weapon here. It doesn't really matter. The only difference being out here the use cost. So for a weapon attack, usually it would be 1 action point, but here we have something added, the spell slots group. So what this means is it requires, I need to look up one of them, but I think if it's 1, it's a spell. If it's 0, it's a cantrip, I think. The next one being use 1 slot of level 1, so 1 spell slot of level 1. Use 1 spell slot of level 2, 1 spell slot of level 3. It's just the first one in this that I'm not entirely sure of. Animation has verbal component. So for spells, I can't change that. Why don't we just go ahead and actually start by creating our own, because then we can take a look at all of these. So I've copied Magic Missile, that would be the base, and then I'm going to our own. So this is tutorial mod, projectile, and we want our own Magic Missile, but we'll call it Frozen Missile or whatever. The parent, however, will be Magic Missile Shared that we just looked at. And a few things we can do right away. So we change the damage from force to cold. And let's see what else. I think now we just need to deal with the tooltips. So in the description, we also make sure it is shown that it's doing cold damage. And in the tooltip, there's a lot of redundant descriptions and tooltips, but that's just how it is. Cold. The animations and sounds we leave as is. And I'm going to Oh, will you stop that? Oh, it's not enabled. Okay. I am going to remove the spell slot cast right now. I wouldn't. I mean, if you're releasing a real mod to the public, I would leave that in. Spells should cost something, but in this case, for testing, and I can't be bothered, long resting and doing all kinds of funny stuff in our little test environment. So I'll just leave the use cost for one action point. Spell animation we leave. What else do we have? Prepare effect, cast effect. Also not something we'll be dealing with. Okay, so that should basically be our spell. Now we just need a way to make it available in our little test environment. I won't be talking about, so I mean you can add this so that character class paladin gets this at level 1, or the warlock gets it at level 3, or whatever you want. It's not relevant right now for just creating a new spell, so I'll just be ignoring that, and instead I will be finding, didn't we have some magic underwear in here? We do, that we used for, we unlocked a spell a long time ago. We unlocked Misty Step on this underwear, and that's fine. So we can unlock some more. So unlock spell, and it's a projectile spell, and it's called Toot. Did I call it? What did I call it again? Frozen missile. Okay. So Toot, frozen missile. Did I put? Okay. So that should do it. That should unlock the spell for whoever wears this fantastic underwear. And I think that should be it. So we save that, and let's get in game and just see if we're now able to cast Magic Missile. So we go in. We have Karlak visiting us today. She is going to need some gear. So as usual, spawn item. And then we need our backpack. And let's just open that. To not confuse matters, we just need the underwear. And then, okay, so it unlocks Magic Missile. Did we not change the name of that? Maybe not. Okay. And then we need a test target. So why don't we spawn in wolf? And then that seems to work nicely. Let's just finish this combat. Get away, wolf. Oh, come on, Karlak. Okay, so we can see blue damage numbers. That's already a good sign. Let's just double check here. Yep, wolf was hit for cold damage. So we definitely have our own version of Magic Missile, and it does cold damage instead of the default force damage. So we're already off to a good start. Let's just go back to our stats editor and look at the name, because I must have forgotten to change that. So let's see. Oh yeah, there we go. So frozen missile, and then shoots magical darts, each dealing. Let's just for fun. Shoots magical snowballs, each dealing whatever, they always hit the target. Fantastic. Deal damage cold. That's cool. And just to play around a bit, why don't we say that this one can actually hit 4 targets? And then all we need to do is also make sure this is clear from the description. We change that, and I don't think anything else is needed. We did see Karlak. First of all, we saw her cast it at all. She doesn't have spell slots, and she was able to use it once per round. So this is working the way we intended. Let's save that and go in and just test it out. So switch back to game. Just heal up Karlak in case she misses again and gets into trouble. So let's take a look at, not at this one here. So Frozen Missile deals cold damage, shoots 4 magical snowballs, each dealing 2 to 5 cold damage. They always hit the target. Okay. So spawn another wolf to be our test subject. And yes, can indeed select 4 missiles. That takes care of the wolf. Okay, so our spell is working. Now I know, before you say it, it's red, and I mean the icon is wrong, the spell effect is wrong. I know, we'll get to that. Let's first get the functionality of the spell working the way we want it, and then we'll get into the other good stuff. Okay, so there's like a couple of choices here, and I just spent a little bit of time pondering because I still really want to keep these videos around the 30-minute mark. And if we start talking visuals, so we need to change the icon. But to change the icon, I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but I need to then go through, well, you need to, extract the icon, change it in whatever tool you have available, like paint.net or Photoshop or whatever. Save it back. It needs to be named specifically and saved on disk and then imported. Time flies when you're having fun. The other thing is to actually change the visuals. So our magic missile stops being red. My intention is to make it a bluish kind of glow because whatever, it would be enough to prove a point. But that too requires introduction to some really scary tools like the effect editor that I haven't even begun to cover yet. So I decided that why don't we create an upcast for a spell so we can get a little bit of a feel for how that works, and that would leave us in a good position to start talking visuals in the next video. So how do we upcast? Well, I already hinted at it. We're going to need, we have it open here. We're going to need to find an example of an upcast, and if we take a look at Magic Missile 2, so we have it here, and just to see how does that work, right? So it's at the top here. So it does, the original does force magical damage. It's the same amount of targets, now changes to 4. So I mean, for our upcast we're gonna have to make 5 because we can already do 4. What else changes? Everything else stays the same. Description, etc. has updated. The tooltip damage has updated. Did we actually remember to do that? Maybe not. Let's go back and see. Tooltip damage. Oh, I still. No, we didn't. 44. So it doesn't affect how a spell functions, but it does affect how it displays or the preview. And I can see there's a magic. So this is the upcast description. Whatever. whatever this is. Oh, okay, so it's going, interesting. Let's leave this for now, because I don't really know where this additional... So the upcast description will give you extra magic missiles. I need to figure out where this list comes from, and I honestly don't know. So when I don't know, I'm just gonna leave it as is. We'll figure this out. Use cost. Okay, so back to Magic Missile 2, which is the one we're interested in. And the changes will come. So everything here, I'm scrolling over it quickly, but it stays the same. So we can see here that originally it now uses one level 2 slot when you upcast it. And that's what you should be doing as well, if making a real spell. And we'll get, once we implement this and we start attaching it to a class, it will, so this is going to happen in the 3rd episode of our little spell series, probably. So for now we're just going to leave that, but out here we will find something, and it says basically the root spell ID. So that's the original base magic missile it's pointing to here, and then power level 2. And for magic missile 3, still the same base magic missile and power level 3. And that's it. Everything else stays the same. There's some combat override with AI. I don't fully know what that is. I don't know why the AI needs a special version of Magic Missile. And right now I don't particularly care, to be honest. But we should be able to do that with our own. So let's do a Frozen Missile 2, and the parent will be our own Frozen Missile. Okay, so we're well underway. And then we change the amount of targets to 5 for our upcasted version. And then we need the spell, the description parameters. So that stays that. Now we have 5 missiles. And here for the damage list, 5d4. Okay. This one, the upcast description, we leave for now. I need to see where you actually see this in game and where we can add to that. But for right now, so the use, I mean, since it's gonna be an action point regardless, I mean, why wouldn't you upcast it? But again, for purposes of what we're doing here, should be fine. For now, I'll be happy if I can just get the upcast going. And then we need to find that root spell ID and power level. So here we go. So root spell ID, so that was projectile, tutorial frozen missile, and this is power level 2. And you know what? So I've never done one of these before. You are witnessing the world premiere or whatever for this, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm at a point now where I want to try this out. Let's see what actually happens. So we go back in game. Hello, Karlak. And let's just see. Okay, so we're clearly missing something because there's no upcast happening. We still only have 4 projectiles. That's fine. That would have been a little bit too much maybe if that had worked on the first go. So let's see what else is missing. So I'm wondering, so it could be that the use cost is the same, and maybe Let's rule that out. Let's also add, so the upcast will cost an action point and a bonus action point. I don't know if this is enough, but let's just see. Hello again, Karlak. No, I shouldn't be so lucky. Alright, so this is where I pause the video and do a little bit of offline research. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I had to take a little detour, and took me a while to figure out what was actually going on. And as usual, with modding, assumption is the mother of, yeah, you know the rest. So let me just basically show that we now have frozen missile here. So at this point, Karlak is not wearing, well, she is wearing underwear, but she's not wearing our underwear. This is a completely vanilla, not Karlak, Shadowheart, obviously, who was spawned in, and she still has that spell available, and that turned out to be the thing. So what I learned was that unlocking a spell on an item is all fine and well, and you unlock that spell. It's as simple as that. And even though there's created upcast versions, etc. for it, the game simply doesn't expect that. That's the best I've been able to determine. It simply doesn't look for upcast, because that doesn't really make sense for something that's activated from an item. It sort of assumes that the one you activate, that's the one you want. So okay, cool. I guess that makes sense. So what I had to do instead, and I'll show you, of course, how, is to go add it to Shadowheart spell list, or as it was, I added it to the cleric spell list, but we can add it to whatever. And that allowed for, so I have here Karlak, why do I keep saying Karlak? Shadowheart. I've leveled her up to level, what is she now, 4? Just so she would have some spell slots. The reason for that is I've added the spell cost back in there, because it now makes sense. It's a real spell in every sense of the word. And as we can see from poor Will over here, the spell most definitely works. So we have Frozen Missile. Level 1 does 8 to 20 damage. Level 2 does 10 to 25. And obviously it doesn't do any cold damage right now. So why don't we spawn in a wolf, even though Shadowheart, oh, she saved this time. She doesn't really like wolves. Let's get that going. And we can see it's definitely our spell. It does cold damage. So what did I actually do to make this happen? Well, let's take a quick look. So we still have Frozen Missile. So all of this stays the same. I messed around a little bit with the description, no, not the description parameters, actually the tooltip damage list, and I also did, so this here, so I sort of tried to explain, okay, it does 1d4 plus 1 more cold damage when you upcast it. I still haven't quite figured out where that is shown, but it seemed to make sense. And then everything else, let me just double check, everything else stays the same. So everything we did is still valid. Now there is a new element to it. How did Shadowheart get that spell? And for that we need to introduce a new tool, the UUID editor. So it will come up looking something like this, and it definitely confused the heck out of me to begin with. But in here is where so let me just close this for now. I'll explain what it is. In here basically map things in the game. Maybe that's not helping a lot. If we take a look at these lists here, so I don't know what this particular list does, but it's just to show an example. It's basically linking various parts of the game together. So this is where you attach abilities to classes, etc., etc. And turns out that's exactly what we need to be doing here. So what we need to do, or what I needed to do and did, was to modify the spell list for Shadowheart. And the way that is done is, here are all the different, so if we look at action resource definitions, we can add one of those. Approval ratings, we can add one of those. So if we want to expand these parts of the game, class descriptions, etc., etc. What I was after here was spell lists. So we can see lists, there's many different lists, ability lists, skill list, equipment lists. So equipment list, for instance, is where it is maintained what starting gear the various characters have. Passive lists, color definitions. But for purposes of this, we're after spell list. So the way you do this is, actually, let me, you know what? Boom, let me just clear that. So we want to create the first field. This needs to be something unique to your mod, and the tool will take care of that. So we go in here and saying we want a tutorial mod spell list, and in that we want, let me just do some copy paste. So we want frozen missile, and so that's a projectile spell, and we want that merged into another spell list. So I started by typing cleric, and then we have cleric knowledge domains, life domains, light domain, nature domain, or basically cleric spell level 1. So I had it on trickery domain just now, but I actually, let's try this quickly. I think I tried it, but I might have made a mistake, and that didn't quite work the way I expected it to. So welcome to modding, but that should be it. That really should be it. I've saved that. Let's go back in game. So it requires a level. Okay, so she's out of level 1 spell slots. Did I show that? No, actually I didn't show that. Let's just go back. So I've added the cost back in, and I wish I could find anything quickly in this tool. You're just gonna have to bear with me. Oh, come on. There we go. So use cost, so spell slot, I basically put it the same way Magic Missile works. As a final closer, we can try taking that off and just see how that goes. But for now, I just want to see the whole thing working. So, and then we go back in game, and just to make absolutely sure, I will respec Shadowheart. So she's still a cleric, and I'll leave her in the trickery subdomain. But I basically just want to see that spell showing up. And here we are. So we just need to prepare it. I see it down here. We get rid of Prayer of Healing, put this one up. So now we have Frozen Missile available to all clerics at level 1. and it can be upcast to level 2. So I'd call that a great success. Now it does what we expect it to. We can upcast it. Oh, be quiet, Will. I'm not recording sound for whatever, but he's over there really feeling sorry for himself. And yeah, so that's it. So just a very quick recap. We need the UUID object editor, which is right next to the stats editor. We need to go down to lists for our mod, tutorial mod, add a spell list, and then don't do anything with this. The tool will autofill this with the unique value. The name here is just for your own sake, so you know what it is. Probably this should be tutorial mod cleric spell list, and then a list of spells. If there's more than one, you would have a semicolon, and then just keep adding all the spells you need, and then merge into, in this case, cleric, but I'm sure we could find fighter, and so, okay, there's not a lot of spells in a fighter, obviously. So wizard, etc., etc. I don't honestly know if there's a spell list for everyone. There probably is. Let's just have a quick look. If there's anything that looks obvious. So Githyanki race. So maybe there's a human race. No. Okay. So that I don't know. We'll probably get into it again at a later date. So I just put that back because this we know works. And save that. And with that, our spell is done. Or I should say our spell is half done, because there's still more we want to do. But functionally, it now does what we wanted to do. The only thing you could want, basically, is add more upcasts, 3, 4, 5, etc. But that's just going to be a repeat of what we did. Now, as a last thing, I just wanted to see what the game actually does. So, as I said before, it's the first time I'm doing an upcast spell. So I honestly don't know how this will work, but we will find out in just a second. So here we go. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty cool. So I can use level 1 for 1 action point, and I can use level 2 for 1 action point, which is of course not something you should be doing, but it will actually make life easier when testing and so on. So now you know basically how the mechanic works. You're free to do, whatever you want with this, as with anything we do here. So why don't we park it for now, and then next time we'll start looking at how we can change the visual effects of our new spell. Have fun modding!